ladies and gentlemen, in my house today, the one, the only Derick Fage.
Hey, how are you?
I'm very good. Thanks for joining us. You just told me you're a Dolphins fan.
I am.
Here, I'll take a look over here, is
Nice.
Dan Marino's wristband when he broke the career touchdowns.
Nice.
After the game, I was, talking to the guy. I was on the team at the time, and just not even looking for a souvenir, but he's like, here you go, and he gave me that.
That's
Isn't that
awesome.
crazy?
That's crazy.
It is crazy. That's
great.
actually a different.
I was going to wear my Merino jersey, and I thought,
Yeah, I had a Merino jersey when I was a kid too.
Yeah, my friend, actually a friend that I met online back in the day when I was working at my dad's accounting firm. And there was a group of us that we had this Dolphin site, this chat room.
Okay.
And we all just started connecting and talking Dolphin talk. And it was amazing because we're talking to people from the States, from Australia, from all around the world, Dolphin fans.
Yeah.
And two of the guys that I was talking to for like months find out that they're Ottawa guys. And so Graham Duck and Dave Pridham, and we started going into the local heroes, watch the games together.
So what year, you said when you were 6 years old, you became a Dolphins fan?
Yeah.
What year was that? That was when they, 85 probably, when they made the Super Bowl?
I was born in 69, so that's early 70s.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So mid-70s.
So it's before Marino then?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You're a before Marino Dolphins
Before
fan.
Marino Dolphins
Is
fan.
that before Don Shula too?
No, that's about the time Don would have come in,
right?
Because he was 72, 73,
yeah,
right? The two Super Bowls.
Okay.
It was just by chance. My parents had a condominium in Florida at the time. And when you were in Florida in those times, there were like 5 channels.
Yeah.
And everything was Dolphins talk.
Yeah.
That's how I fell in love with them. I love the logo. I always loved football.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with the logo and the team, and Dolphins fan ever since. It's been a tough 25 years, I'll tell you.
That's amazing. Well, yeah, for sure. And it's amazing that because Dan Marino's such an amazing quarterback and had the Marks brothers and the whole bit, and he's considered one of the greatest of all time and never won a championship. Isn't that interesting? Because they compare him to the guys who have won 4 and 5 Super Bowls.
Oh, exactly.
That's how good he was.
I would say a lot of people still say he's probably the best pure pocket passer that ever played the game.
Sure.
I mean, obviously, Tom Brady is probably going to be the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
For me, Joe Montana, I always thought was one step ahead of Marino.
Yeah.
That was a killer when they lost that Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I'll never forget.
Yeah, for sure. I knew people in that Super Bowl. When I played football, I trained with a guy who was in that Super Bowl. So I quickly want to tell you my story because we've started off with the Dan Marino and the whole thing, and my whole story is about Dan Marino. So actually in '85, my big brother Bill, bought me a Dan Marino jersey for Christmas. We had it on. They made it to the Super Bowl that year. And my big brother's like, you know what? If Dan Marino in his second season can take his team to the NFL Super Bowl, surely someday you could play in the NFL. And I played 1 year of high school football, Gloucester High School down the road. And so we set out to do that, head out to the local sports field and did push-ups and sprints and all that and tried as hard as we could. I get into the next season and I had a good season, scoring touchdowns, the whole bit, made it to the playoffs. And we lost our playoff game on October 30th, 1985.
Okay.
And I walk into the change room and, just terribly shaken up about losing a football game. And then my uncle stands in the doorway and he's like, Mark, come here. And I walk over and my uncle says to me, Mark, I'm sorry to tell you this, but your big brother Bill died today. You see, my brother was born with a hole in his heart. And from a young age, the doctors told him that any day could be his last day. And he never let that get in his way in life. And he had this great attitude about living every day to its fullest. And sort of on that day, on October 30th, the dream of me making it to the NFL, I made a promise to my brother that I'd never stop trying to do that till I did it, or till there was nowhere left to keep trying. And this kid from Gloucester High School who plays 6 games a year is, got it in his head and his heart that he's going to make it to the NFL, and never won All-Star awards to my 6th year of high school. Went back for the victory lap. And finally got an offer to go play at a university, but no scholarship, paid my own way. A great school, Bishop's University, smallest football paying school in Canada. Go there, and I'm going as a receiver, and I show up with a broken ankle and a tip of my finger cut off, and don't play a game my first year. You know, and then the next year I'm like, I'm ready to go, and they moved me to D-line, and you know what that's like, right? Offense to defense, and then they moved me back because I was terrible to offense. Yeah, and I'm still the 6'6" but 220-pound offensive lineman, which is way undersized.
No kidding.
So I got a lot of work to do, and I'm eating, and I'm never giving up, and you know I'm trying as hard as I can, and never winning All-Star awards there. And I go back for a 5th year at Bishop's University after never giving up. And I won an All-Star award that year, and sent out my videotapes to all the NFL teams, because I'm not giving up on this dream. I get an invite by the Detroit Lions to training camp, which is amazing.
No kidding.
And do really, really well there. I trained and practiced 10 years of never giving up and just pedal to the metal, and I get cut there, sent home, and then I was wondering what's going to happen, and on October 29th I get a phone call. It says fly down to Florida. So the next day, October 30th, 1995, 10 years to the day of my big brother Bill passing away, 10 years of me making that promise to him. I did a workout for the Miami Dolphins, and Don Shula's like, all right, kid, why don't you go inside, sit down. Somebody will be in to talk to you in a moment. I go in, sit down, I'm still trying to
I can't even imagine how you're feeling at that point.
I'm just mind blown, right? Just what's happening. I don't even know what's happening. As I'm sitting there, this door at the other end of the room opens up, and this guy walks in. I'm like, that guy's so familiar. Who is that? And as I'm trying to figure it out, he walks over to me, puts out his hand. He goes, hey, Mark Hatfield, I'm Dan Marino. I heard you just made the team.
Wow.
10 years to the day, man.
That's incredible.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Well, and for Dan Marino, of all people to tell you you've made the team, man, that's pretty special.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And that's a story. I know I go around to schools and I tell people, and and never give up on your dreams. And it's all about hard work, and bad things are going to happen. Terrible things are going to happen, but don't let those get in the way, right? And those can be the motivators, the reason why we end up achieving the things that we want to achieve. So anytime, something terrible or bad happens, find the beauty in it, find the thing in it that's going to spark you in the right direction and just make a positive difference in the world that we live in. And I know that's something that you do too.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
That's the Derick Fage story, right? Well, we'll start off. Yeah. Well, I mean, you're from Ottawa, right?
Yeah.
What high school did you go to?
I did a tour.
Okay.
Of various high schools.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. I went to Fisher Park. I went to Sir Robert Borden. I went to Nepean.
Holy shit.
Then I finally graduated from Woodruff High School after dropping out 3 times. I dropped out of high school on 3 separate occasions.
Wow. And because
I had a really hard time in school.
Yeah.
I wasn't a very good student. I was very distracted. I think one of the reasons why I went to different high schools is sort of, I always look for that rebirth. When people found out about my medical condition, I just wanted to get away.
Okay.
So
people knew that.
Well, I mean, I didn't advertise it. That's for sure. At that time, I did everything I could to hide it. But at times it wasn't easy to hide. It was a lot of sort of shame and embarrassment around those ages too. When you're looking at high school age, being someone that is born with chronic fecal incontinence, and I'm still wearing protection to this day, but now it doesn't bother me, but back then it certainly
so that means you just poo whenever you don't control it.
I don't even have really any nerves in the area either, so I can't necessarily feel it, so I go to the washroom as often as I can to make sure, but I have to wear protection. I wore diapers till I was about 13 years old, which was hard to hide. I was involved in sports quite a bit, and of course, in school change room, I always changed in the bathroom stall by myself, which the rest of the kids always wondered, why the hell are you always? I never explained it, but I just go to the washroom. I might as well just change. In elementary school, I had my own key to the staff washroom. Ooh. So I had my own little private one. I had the golden key, man.
Yeah, the school change room must it's a terrible environment in the best of times, right? You're getting undressed with these peers, and some of them have muscles and hair and others don't. It's just a terrible environment. I mean, I was super skinny too, and there'd be guys like, I don't know if you know Mark Dubé or whatever, who looked like a man in grade 8, and it was terrifying. But So how common what is it, medical condition is this?
Not very common at all.
I'd never heard
actually.
of it.
Yeah. There's not many. We don't even have the stats. I'm on the board of directors for the Canadian Continence Foundation and ambassador for them. We have stats on urinary incontinence, but we don't have statistics on, the latest of what we've seen. But of course, that's sending out a survey and hoping people are going to tell you whether they are or not. Now, we don't know how truthful people want to be about it, but it's probably less than 2% of the population, especially under the age of 65. As you get older, I think that goes up to about 2 to 4% of the population.
Okay.
So yeah, not very common. Common that people may be born with what's called an imperforate anus, which is what I had when I was born, and it was just coincidence. It had nothing to do with my mom's pregnancy and how she treated her body or anything. My mom was actually a good athlete herself, as well as my dad. And I just got unlucky. So I was born with what's called a high imperforate anus, which means I was born without the actual anal opening. So they had to actually create the opening.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was born without a sphincter muscle. That's the handy little muscle that holds everything up. So without that, you're pretty much born incontinent. Wow. And unfortunately, I also got from my mother and my granny, my dearly departed granny. They had really sensitive stomachs. And I happen to get that.
Storm.
Oh yeah, I happen to have that too. So I have to sort of be careful with my diet. I'm not the best at doing that.
Do you drink coffee? Because we got tons of it right
there. I do drink coffee. I shouldn't drink coffee. I shouldn't drink alcohol. I stay away from sugar. Sugar's the big
good.
one.
Yeah.
It tends to upset my stomach, cramps, diarrhea, and when you're incontinent with diarrhea, you may have 30 seconds to get to the washroom. I have literally under 3 seconds to get to a washroom.
So you don't. You just let her fly, man.
Well,
right?
you try, right? You come up with these meditative things that you do and have these internal conversations with yourself. And and physical activity, gets things going. So if I'm like walking down the street and I feel something coming, I literally have to stop and stand there for a few moments to try to gather myself and hope that I don't flush right out.
So I got to tell you this. I just thought of this actually when I first started doing school speeches. Can I pour you a coffee?
Yeah, sure, man.
Okay, I'll give you this.
Okay.
I started doing school speeches 8 years ago, and the first one I had it, and it was I wanted to go out and put myself on the line and tell people things that might be problems to them or whatever. And not my very first, but we were practicing in the off season when I was playing for the Houston Oilers. Okay. And what you wear is just a jersey, and you wear shorts and the jock strap underneath. And we were, every day there was catered lunches, and we had all this Mexican stuff that was totally foreign to me. And we were standing in a circle with the offense, stretching, to the left, to the right, and I just crapped my
You flushed out.
You did. It went all down my leg and the whole bit. And it is the guy who was leading the stretch, Steve Waterman or whatever, Steve Waters. Anyways, he's still with the team. I went, just go clean up, whatever. And it was, nobody cared. I went in.
Really?
The trainer, maybe the Mexican food did it all the time. didn't matter. And I went in, I changed, showered, came back out, and everything was fine.
They didn't rib you?
No, nobody really cared. No, and the whole,
cool.
the whole, end of that, the whole speech, then I give the speech, and at the end, if you shit your pants, doesn't matter. Shit happens, right? And the principal of the school asked me or suggested I never tell that story again, and this is the second time I've told it. So it's
I got a lot of those stories, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, Mark, I got a lot of those.
I bet. So that's a huge obstacle to overcome, and how did that play out in elementary school?
That didn't play out very well.
Do you need milk? Or is Bailey's there?
I'll go
it's up
for
to
some
you.
milk.
You're
Thank
on
you,
vacation.
man.
Yeah,
that is true. I am on vacation.
Yeah.
Elementary school sucked, to put it mildly. Yeah. I didn't like school at all. I probably used my problem a lot to get away from going to school. I would lie to my mom and tell her, "Oh, Mom, I got stomach cramps this morning. I can't go," because I was afraid to go to school. Yeah, I got picked on relentlessly. I got bullied. I got beaten up. I got called names. I had a pretty long walk to school. Luckily I got to walk with my brother, my buddy John Milkey, John, if you're watching.
Oh, Milky.
I love you. Yeah.
Milkman. Radio.
Yeah, John.
Right
John and I went to elementary school together,
awesome.
and John didn't even know. We'd sort of connect on the way to school. I was just so thankful.
Yeah.
I didn't tell him at the time, but like John was one of my heroes, and he didn't even know it until, I probably told him about 5 years ago what he meant to me.
Really?
Walking to school. Oh yeah, because I get pushed down we had a path. We lived in a beautiful neighborhood in Arlington Woods in Nepean. We had a path that went right by the creek, and they'd push me down the side of the hill. Like, it was a pretty steep hill. Man, I came back from lunch at times, battered and bruised and bloodied, and my mom would bring me back to school after lunch, after she cleaned me up, and I had some lunch, and spoke to the faculty and told them what happened. And, I always had to tell my mom who it was. Yeah. She would talk to some of the kids too. It's interesting because I was saying that to a guest we had on the show. I guess about 3 weeks ago, we were talking about, bullying. And I told, that my mom would confront the kids, but not in an aggressive manner, just, like taking names. Yeah. Hey, Mark, you picked on my son today. Yeah. She'd go right up to you. Yeah. And I didn't threaten them or anything, just sort of saying, hey, you're on the record. And this woman said, oh, you shouldn't confront kids, and you have to be really careful. I was like, well, it depends on how you confront the child. I mean, obviously you can't be aggressive, but I think it's good to put kids on notice. But yeah, getting back to your original question, it wasn't a fun time. I was, as I said, a terrible student, but I think a lot of that had to do with I had these internal conversations with myself all day, every day. I was distracted all the time. I mean, my mom used to joke with me that, if Ritalin was around when I was a kid, they probably would have put me on some maximum dosage. For sure. I certainly suffered from ADHD, but interestingly enough, it helps you later on in life. If you can find a way to focus that energy, which thankfully my parents helped me find a way to focus that energy. But, having that medical issue and being hyperactive, man, it didn't help at all. And I was, the class clown and always speaking out and drawing attention to myself when I should have been doing the absolute opposite thing. Right. I shouldn't have been drawing attention to myself. Right. But
it's a coping mechanism, right? I mean, that's, as a comedian, those are the people, who are comedians, right? They're always someone who had that internal conversation going on, and there's something that, they perceived as not normal, when in reality, everyone's got something that's not the same as everyone else, right? That's being human, And I mean, it's the same for me. I was 6'6", 140 pounds, right? So you think, of course, people picked on me, right? I can beat up that tall guy, and it happened every day, like the old crouch down behind you, and the other friend pushes you over, and everyone laughs and runs away. And I mean, it was an everyday thing back then too, right? 70s and 80s. Teachers just, they didn't care if you were being bullied. They were smoking in the classrooms, right? Like it was a different era for sure. So
we treated it differently.
Yep. Right? Yeah, for sure. And so you said your parents helped you out with that, focusing that energy in the positive direction. What age was that?
It was at a very young age. My dad was extremely athletic, so he loved sports. He was a great football player, a great gymnast, great hockey player as well. So my dad sort of introduced us to sport. My mom was a good athlete herself as well. She was a great softball player, and they helped me focus. I would say it probably started around 6 or 7 years old. Oh wow! My dad and I would throw the football around all the time. As I think I got more into it around 8, 9, and 10 years old, where I was starting to really get attracted to sports. And my dad actually got my brother and I into competitive squash. I started playing squash at the old Greenway Glen squash court in Nepean, and I got to be pretty good, actually. I was a pretty good squash player, and I think that was sort of the one sport that started everything. And then my brother and I took, which is crazy, like suffering from incontinence and getting involved in sports.
Yeah.
Like,
a sport where you wear white clothes too.
Yeah, just like, what was I thinking?
Well, you're lunging all the time.
Oh yeah. And then I was competitive swimming, competitive diving, which man, I would literally some days I would eat like sugar the day before so that I would flush my system out.
Okay.
Because I knew I was going to swimming lessons the next day.
Wow.
To make sure that I didn't have an accident in the pool, because man, that would have been absolutely just devastating.
Yeah.
But yeah, around the 8, 9, and 10, and then as I got a bit older, I was, as I said, a Miami Dolphins fan. I started when I was about 6, but I would say I got really interested in football and hockey and following. I never played hockey, which was unusual because my dad was such a big fan and played hockey till he was literally, I think, 68 years old. He was still playing in, the seniors league over 35, and he was the oldest guy. But I watched sports on television probably starting at 10 years old. I was just addicted to watching NFL football, CFL football, and NHL hockey. And then I actually played quarterback for Ashbury College.
Oh, you told me you went to Ashbury already, or that's another one?
No. This is that's another one. That was grade 8 and 9. I went to Ashbury.
Oh, okay.
I actually got a letter. Well, my parents got a letter after grade 9 that said, we think it's in the best interest of the school, and I was known as Ricky in those days, and Ricky, that he not attend.
Really?
Yeah, I was a bit of a troublemaker.
A nice way of kicking you out.
Yeah, it was
pretty
much a nice proper way of kicking me out. But that I would say that I think it was grade 8 when I went out for the football team. That was probably the most memorable year in sports for me, because I went out as a wide receiver. My dad and I, we used to play this game where we would start far apart from each other on the front lawn and whip the football as hard as we can at each other, and then you'd take a step closer to each other and whip the football, and whoever dropped it first would lose. And we get pretty darn close, and I would literally have a bruise on my chest, because and my dad always, you got to catch it with your hands, you're not allowed to catch it with your body, but once you got that close, you couldn't catch it with your hands anymore, so you were trying to catch it like this.
That's a great game. That's a great training game.
It was fun, man.
You'd be a good receiver.
So my dad and I, we were just practicing throwing the football around before the first day of sort of football at Ashbury. And the coaches come over and they say to you, what are you going out for? And the quarterback from the year before was back. So I didn't want to compete. I wanted to play quarterback, but I wanted to play. So I said, I'm going out for wide receiver. And he said, well, watching you throw around the football, you got a pretty good arm. You should go out for quarterback. And I explained, well, I want to start. That's why I'm going out for wide receiver. He said, well, you know what? Go out for quarterback, and if you don't make it, we can throw you in at wide receiver too. I won't necessarily be the number 1 or number 2, but And it was after the first game. I think it was the second game of the season. We were losing, and at the half they put me in, and I started the rest of the season.
Nice. That's
just amazing.
The Tom Brady story right there,
man,
except for
amazing.
Except for the Super Bowls and MVPs.
Yeah, all of that missing. But yeah, I wish I would have stuck with it. It's probably a great regret I had. I turned away, unfortunately, from sports for a variety of reasons. Started making bad decisions in my life.
Like drugs or
alcohol? So more. So started smoking cigarettes. It was one of those things. Hey, I want to be cool. Started smoking, and I smoked for 22 years.
Oh wow!
I quit 7 years ago. Okay, cold turkey.
And you feel much better?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I probably today, or I'm in better shape today than I was when I was 20, 25, 30 years old, for sure.
And you feel better?
Yeah, I feel much better.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever even smoked a cigarette, but I mean, just from people I know who are doing it for 10, 15 years, and then you stop, it's like a rebirth, right? Like it's terrible. You can breathe again.
It's a terrible habit, man.
Yeah, it is terrible, for sure.
But I self-medicated. I went through some pretty deep depression times. In my late teens, early 20s was probably darkest times. Intimacy was starting to become something that we all want. But I was horrified with the fact of being intimate, because what if something happened? Right. And didn't tell any of the girlfriends that I had. So when we started getting closer, I sort of started being more and more distant. And I was desperate for a girlfriend, so I never broke up with any girlfriend, but they broke up with me because I stopped calling, I stopped talking, you know. That's around the time I had planned to take my own life. Actually, I was living with my friend Gary, and I picked the day, and I had it all prepared, and I was before that, you know, sort of self-medicating with alcohol and marijuana, and kind of brings you into that sort of, you know, death spiral, unfortunately. And I was in my bedroom beside Gary and ready to go through with it. And thankfully, I had an aha moment, you know, where I just, you know, going back to growing up, I had such a great support group. That's probably why, you know, to this day, I still tell people, you know, they say, oh, you know, elementary school, how bad it was for you. But I still had an amazing childhood. Like, I really did. Yeah. I had amazing friends and friends of the family. My parents and my brother and my sister, stepsisters, stepmother, stepfather, you know, on and on. My extended family, my grandparents, aunts and uncles. We spent a lot of time with family and best friends and so forth. And I just lying in bed and preparing and just thinking, wow, you know, all these people that supported me, you know, I'm gonna really let them down if I do this. I was thinking, you know, to my best friends in the room next to me, and that'll ruin his life, right? His name's Gary Field, still my best friend to this day. What if Gary walks into the room, you know, tomorrow morning and tries to wake me up, and I don't wake up? Life's not just about you, is what I thought, right? Because I think I strive to be happy so badly that I forgot it was okay to be unhappy and to acknowledge it, right? For sure. So, you know, self-medicating, unfortunately, doesn't allow you to sort of stop and think of those things. That, hey, you know, life isn't just about you. There's a lot of people that care about you and would understand if you talk to them. When I told Gary about it years later, he was pretty upset that I didn't approach him. You know, it's like, hey man, I was your best friend. Why didn't you say anything? And I don't know. I was just, I guess, ashamed, embarrassed. For sure. Always wanted, you know, you want to work things out on your own, right? And I always thought I was mentally tough enough to do that, but I guess didn't realize how I was sort of spiraling out of control. And I didn't realize how deep the depression was, I guess, until, you know, those days leading up where I didn't want to take it anymore. But I'm glad I had that, because not everybody does, you know. That's right. Not everyone has, unfortunately, if you suffer from, you know, mental illness. You know, depression is certainly a mental illness, but I wasn't in such, I guess, a state where I couldn't think, at least logically. Thankfully, I sort of took that step back and went, wow, yeah, life's more about me, and then acknowledged being unhappy is okay. Yeah, I'm unhappy. That's okay, man. Yep. Let's figure it out then. What do I need to do to get myself out of this? Yeah, that's. I mean, like you say, everybody has those dark times, and when we start realizing that we're not alone, right? Yeah. And, you know, there's places to go and talk and just you know, listen to people, right? Just listen. Someone's got a story to tell, and you listen to it, right? And that's what can get you through, right? Yeah. Like, and so where did you go from there? Like, you made the decision not to do it. Yeah, I scaled back on the self-medicating. I think that was a good start for me, and then, you know, started just figuring out what am I passionate about. You know, I wasn't going to be an athlete at, you know, 20 years old. That's for sure. But something else I fell in love with, again, thanks to my parents, was drama and theater. I think probably to help me maybe with my self-esteem and self-confidence, which I think might surprise a lot of people, that I struggled with that. Even as a kid, it would probably surprise people because I was so outgoing and class clown and so forth. But I think you do that because you lack self-esteem and self-confidence, right? And you want to impress everybody.
You don't want them to see what you're hiding, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so they for summer camp, they sent me to a drama summer camp, and I loved it, man. It was so much fun. We did improv exercises all the time, and it was a great way to be outgoing without getting in trouble.
Wow, that sounds like your environment, right?
Yeah, it was a perfect environment for me, for sure. And in my 20s, I sort of, because after I left high school, I sort of went straight from when I finally graduated. My dad's proud. I finally did.
So you graduated in your 20s, high school?
I graduated at the age of 18.
Yeah. From high school?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's
I dropped out 3 times. So.
But 18 is young.
No,
I would think I was 20.
Might have been 19.
Okay.
Might have been 19. Those days are a bit of a blur.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I was probably 19, and I started working at my dad's accounting firm. So I kind of got away from acting.
Yeah.
And it was a few years later, I met my first wife, and I was talking to her parents and telling them, how much I loved acting and just sharing stories. I was in the assembly committee, and I wrote and directed and acted and in a lot of plays. I was in Insight Theater, a local theater company sponsored by Planned Parenthood, which was amazing. I did that when I was 15, 16 years old. We did shows at schools and community centers and that kind of thing. Great. So my mother-in-law at the time saw an ad in the paper for a murder mystery dinner theater company here in Ottawa called Big Time Murder Productions. And she's like, hey, you've always told us how much you love acting. You should... Why don't you go and check that out? Yeah. And so I like, why not? So I did. I auditioned, and they literally called me back shortly thereafter and said, "Man, you're in. If I didn't even realize it paid. I thought it was just honestly, the owner Pete Dillon. He was. I told him that, a while later, and he was like, "Damn, if I had known, I wouldn't have paid you." But I thought, you get to go and have a free meal. Yeah. You get to be somebody else for 3 hours and forget about all your problems in the world.
Isn't that the best kind of job?
Great. Yeah. Oh, it was amazing. Yeah. So that rekindled my passion for acting, and I started acting again, and that certainly helped again get me out of the mood I had been in. That the depression I had been in. Yeah. And
you found something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I absolutely loved it. Yeah. It was great.
What I've never been to one of those. What you're eating and then someone's like killed and
it was it's pretty cool. So we'd actually start during the cocktails, which was I think a lot different than a lot of murder mystery companies were doing at the time. It was a pretty unique thing. But during cocktails, we as characters would come out, we'd start mingling with you. And you could tell that we were actors, right? We were larger than life in the crazy costumes and so forth. And that's when you sort of started laying the groundwork for all the different personalities and characters in the murder mystery. So there was about 5 or 6 cast members, and we'd go through. And during the cocktail hour, one of us would get killed. Yeah, what character did you play? Pretty dramatic. Oh, I played probably over a dozen different characters. Okay. Donnie Cocktail was probably my favorite. Yeah. He was this sweaty Italian ladies' man. It was hilarious. Great character. I played some female characters too. There was a time where we were low on female cast members, so I was like the skinniest guy, and they were like, "Hey, you know what? Why don't you go?" Actually, it was by mistake because we were at a murder mystery out of town. I think it was like Belleville or Brockville, and one of our cast members. She was. It was like 45 minutes before the show, and she still wasn't there. Kim Erschatz. Unfortunately passed away. Beautiful woman and a great actress. And Pete calls Kim up. Hey, where are you? And we're going on. And about a half an hour at this time, 15 minutes had gone by. And she's like, oh my, wrong date. So we had to switch people around. So I ended up playing her character, Judy Rockwell, who was this this drunk former female boxing champion of the Maritimes. That was the story behind her. And it was a huge hit. Like, I played the character, and I even had, the owner, Pete, he often played the cop for the show.
Okay.
And we just had moments where it was hard to keep it together from laughing. It was like a Carol Burnett skit, Wow. It was amazing. Yeah. And so that sort of rekindled my passion for acting, and from there I started doing independent films, voices for video games, that kind of thing. And that was in your 20s. Yeah. And so you're leaning towards acting, and this is like a broadcasting kind of career. Did you go to broadcasting school? No. Wow. So the way the show came about was interesting. I was doing the murder mystery dinner theater, and I was doing the independent films. And, they didn't pay, but hey, you got a starring role in a film, look good on a resume. Mm-hmm. I was starting to build up a resume. I got an agent, Kate Mansour from the Mansour Agency, who's the best agent in the world. She's an amazing woman. Okay. Just an amazing person in general. Mm-hmm. And again, it was one of those happened. I didn't even see it myself. My stepmother. So I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to act in film and television. Mm-hmm. That's what my passion was. That's what I wanted to do. And I was prepared to do it as a hobby. And unfortunately in the arts, that's where many people, fall into that category. Mm-hmm. Is you sort of do it as your passion on the side, and you hope that one day it becomes your full-time job. So I was perfectly happy to continue doing murder mystery dinner theater and these independent films and that kind of thing. And then my stepmother sees an ad in the paper one day. Rogers TV, community TV, is looking for a new host. Yeah. So she calls me up and says, "Hey, you'd be great for this. This is just down the street from where I was working at the time, GGFL accounting firm, my dad's accounting firm." And I sort of, I don't have. They need a video audition. I don't have a video camera. It's due in 48 hours. And typical me, sort of being like, trying to find reasons why not to exactly. Do it, right? Yeah. And she's like, "Well, your dad will borrow a camera, and come on over, and let's do the video audition." So I called up my friend Jamie Douglas, who I was acting with in the murder mystery dinner theater company, and he came over, and he was my subject, so I was the interviewer, and I interviewed him, and dropped off my resume and my video to Rogers TV on Richmond Road. And my resume looked quite good. Actually, when I did up the resume, I was like, wow, I've done a lot of stuff. And I thought, okay, well, at least when they look at it, they'll see I've got a lot of experience. They called me about 2 or 3 days later to say, "Hey, you know what? We liked your video. We're impressed with your resume. Can you come in and do sort of a live audition with us?" Terry Tucker. I know him. Do you know Terry? Oh, yeah. Great guy. Yeah. I had a show on Rogers for 2 years. That's right. The Big Bad Sports Show. That's I remember that. I think it was right before you got there, I believe. Probably. Yeah. I was, when did I start? I think it was 2004. Yeah. 2004. That's right. It was like the year after I stopped doing that show. That's right. Yeah, didn't Tony House? Tony House did it after. That's right. He took over afterwards. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Two great guys there, too. Yeah. Yeah, so they called me in. Lynn Whitehead, who you probably know too. Mm-hmm. She's was my supervising producer, but she was off on maternity leave, so I had my audition with Terry, and they put me through some mock interview scenarios. And again, I think it was not long after, or less than a week after, I got the call from Terry, and he said, "You're one of our finalists, one of our 5 finalists." I remember they had a whole bunch of people in there, right? Yeah, it was. So it was a big. So they had ads in the paper. I mean, it was pretty big. Yeah. And then as one of the 5 finalists, they actually had ads in the paper as well. Vote for your favorite host. Yeah. Right. This is going to be the next host of Daytime Ottawa. It was like that. What was that first Pop Stars? Remember that show when you had to vote and all that? It was like that era, right? Exactly. So they were trying to, and so you were. It got a lot of attention, which was great. That's right, yeah. So online voting, my friends and family just went crazy on online voting. I ended up getting the most votes. I think management had the final say as far as I understood, but I went up against some really, really great people. One of them, Catherine Marion, ended up being my co-host because the co-host at the time, Kristen Johnston, she I think it was day 2 that I was doing the show.
Yeah.
She took me aside and she said, by the way, I'm leaving the show.
Okay.
I was like, what? I just got here.
She's great.
Like, I was like, I want to learn from you, you know? And she, well, I'm not leaving right away, but it was just sort of a blow. Like,
do you remember the show she used to have? It was a home repair show. It was like the first.
But that's what she left
to do?
Daytime Ottawa to do.
Oh,
it was like a home repair, home decor.
I love that show.
She was fantastic on that show.
Her son and my son were on the same hockey team for a few years.
Oh, yeah?
A few years ago. And I used to love that show. Just like a sort of a unique sort of like character on this show, you know, sort of almost fish out of water, you know. And I used to watch it all the time. I don't even remember if it was on Rogers or not.
Yeah, it was.
I can remember seeing them in the stands. I'm like, that lady is so familiar. Who is that? And then right away, you know, and her husband Steve, super nice people, right? So
and the production value was fantastic. I think she even went out and got her own sponsors and everything for that show. It was amazing. So I was kind of taken aback. I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? So we worked together. I think it was probably 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
And then actually the show took off for the summer during those years. So for July and August, Daytime sort of took a sabbatical. During the summer, they reached out to Catherine Marion, who happened to be one of the 5 finalists that I went up against. And they reached out to her and said, hey, are you still interested in hosting this show? And right away, she's like, are you kidding me? Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So her and I were really she was the first full-time host that I had for an entire season. And she's incredibly talented and got picked up to do a national show called The Mom Show.
Yeah, remember it. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, she was real good for sure.
So I was like, man, I loved working with her. I was so disappointed to see her go, but of course, extremely proud of her. I mean, how could she possibly turn down something like that? Yeah. It was a challenge for her, though. I mean, she had to fly into Toronto and shoot. Yeah. I think she did, but I think they did it sort of in a condensed fashion, so it wasn't too bad.
It was a good show too.
It was a great show. Yeah.
I remember.
It was very good.
Secretly watching that show for sure.
And then Melanie Surjak was kind of our on location sort of reporter at the time. She was very much like myself, where we had a full-time job and we were doing this part-time. So I was working sort of 6.5 hours a day at my dad's accounting firm and 3 hours a day at Rogers TV, and then preparing for the show at night. So it was busy time.
It's a 5 days a week show, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be up on all the guests. They're there for 6 minutes, and you got to know what you're going to ask, right?
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing about that show was the fact that we could meet all of our guests prior to the actual live show. So we'd ask all our guests to show up at 10:30. The show was 11 till noon. So we walked into the green room, and that was a magical atmosphere, man.
Yeah.
I loved that green room at Rogers TV. Yeah. It was just so, you'd walk in there, and, I just get energy from people. I'd walk in and just see people, and everyone's talking to each other. It's a great way for networking, and you could just, all of a sudden, you were ready for the show. That's half hour before the cameras started rolling. And you got to meet all those guests and talk to them and, make them feel comfortable, joke with them, and have some fun, and just go over some of the material, because, it's community TV. So there's a lot of those people, it's their first time, their first exposure that they're ever going to get. And they're nervous.
Yeah. So that was completely new for you. You'd never done anything like that. How did you figure it
out? Just by the cool thing. It's intimidating, but the great thing about Rogers TV and community television, I would say, around the world, is you're working with volunteers, and everybody is so busy. Like the full-time staff, I mean, they're wearing 4 or 5 hats, and they're so they don't have time to kind of show you the ropes. So I remember my first day, I didn't even get really a tour of the station. I sort of went in and, obviously got introduced to the team there. Yeah. And they made, here's, put on your microphone and turn on the pack and slide it on your belt and go meet some guests and then go and do the show. And, I think I still have that first show on video. And you could see how nervous I am. I mean, boy, you watch TV, especially, talk shows, and you go, oh, I love people.
Mm-hmm.
I like to talk.
Yeah.
I like listening to stories. I'm going to be great at this.
Yeah.
And then the camera starts rolling. You're like, oh my God, right? It's the atmosphere is completely different.
Yeah.
But my sort of philosophy was I'm going to sort of ignore the cameras.
Okay.
This is how I'm going to get through the nervousness of it,
Mm-hmm.
which, I mean, turns out that's really the best thing to do anyway,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because, when you're sitting down across from somebody and they're your guest, I mean, the camera's kind of that third person in the conversation, but outside of me sort of turning to camera to introduce the guest and thanking them and then, throwing to break, it's a one-on-one or one-on-two or three, whatever it happens to be. And I just learned on the fly. I mean, I think my acting background and my improv background, I was on the improv team for the Improv Olympics in those early days when they first got it going here in Ottawa. So I think that helped, right? I was never at a loss for words, which you need.
That's right.
in that kind of atmosphere, right?
Would you like some more coffee? Sorry.
No, I'm good. I've got about a half cup still.
Okay, sorry, go on. Yeah.
Yeah, just learned on the fly, and I had a great team. Lynn Whitehead, my supervising producer, and Gavin Lumsden. And just and the atmosphere you have in television is such a creative hub, right? Where we were all in cubicles, so everybody was around all the time. You got to bounce
that
ideas.
Big room there. I remember that big room.
Yeah,
Everybody had a desk, like a police precinct.
Exactly. That's exactly what it felt like, for sure. In the early days, it was I didn't really get a lot of time to interact with anybody else. There was people coming in and out, especially when it came to all the sports that we'd cover. So I'd hardly ever see those people. Yeah. But that was the first 3 years, was me working full time at my dad's accounting firm and then doing this. And every year I begged Lynn Whitehead, we had that semi, yearly evaluation. And during that meeting I had with her, I always, if there's any chance I can be full time, I'll take it. I don't care.
What would that make? What would be different about?
Well, number one, because I can concentrate fully on my career in television. Where I was at was during those first 3 years, working 6.5 at my dad's, and then 3 hours at Rogers, and then studying at night for the guests coming. And then I started getting into philanthropy and hosting and emceeing charity events and that kind of thing. It was a busy schedule.
Yeah. Which is really, sorry to interrupt you, but
it's okay.
in sort of local media, that's the real difference maker, right? So when you started, what was the motivation to start doing that sort of stuff?
I think the main motivation was that people reached out to you and they wanted you. Okay. Right? Hey, you know what? We're hosting an event raising funds for or celebrating so-and-so, and we love your personality. We'd love you to come out, and that's when people want you, it makes you feel great. Yeah. And I was like, wow. And then, I know that you're obviously doing something for them, but just how thankful people were for you volunteering your time. Yeah. And for me, it was just a natural fit. I love people. I think too, when you go through challenges in life, I think I'm grateful for the medical condition and for the challenges, because it shapes who you are, and I think it makes you more understanding of people. I think it makes you more compassionate. I think you connect with people better on not a religious level, a spiritual level. I honestly believe in the human spirit, and that we can share energy with each other. And was the main attraction. And then people, Derick, thank you so much for coming out. And I sort of, don't worry, you don't have to thank me.
That's right.
I'm loving this. This
amazing.
Is great.
Yeah.
I'm having an amazing time. Yeah. And to this day, I've never charged for emceeing and hosting an event. My dad always said, you should. Right. They're paying the DJ and they're
right.
Well, yeah, but that may be true. But you know, if I can't donate monetarily, this is my donation. That's right. And that's the way I always felt about that. Yeah. And, you know, let's be honest, and, you know, I had a contract even in those, while I worked part-time, there was an expectation that you went to events, that you did public appearances, but, you know, I think it was a dozen a year. I was doing 3 dozen or more a year because I absolutely loved it. Yeah. And getting back to, you know, talking to Lynn during those evaluations, you know, I said, I know it'll be a pay cut for me because, you know, I've been at my dad's firm for, at that time, you know, 16, 17 years. I had a good paycheck coming in. I had benefits. And I knew that, you know, Rogers isn't going to be able to offer me a lot of money. But, you know, they finally after year 3, when I started working with TL Rader, who I worked with for 5 years, TL and I had incredible chemistry, and I don't think they wanted to lose that chemistry and lose either of us, because, as I said, you know, because TL was working, her and her husband owned a dance school, so she was working as well, and they didn't want to lose either of us. And I think we sort of proved ourselves that, you know, we were hardworking. Yeah. I mean, we were doing everything humanly possible. Yeah. Right.
Very visible in the community.
Yeah.
Real.
And so they offered TL and I full time. And TL and I sort of sat down with each other and chatted, and hey, this is what we want. So let's do it. I had just moved in with my ex-wife to our dream home, pretty much, and accepting this job, we were going to have to sell that dream home. Wow. So 8 months after we bought it, we put it up for sale. Wow. And downsized. Yeah. I don't regret it. I didn't care. Yeah. It was just a house. It was amazing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was amazing to go in there, walk through those doors every day, to do what I absolutely love doing, and, you know, with a smile on my face, and rarely had a bad day walking in through those doors.
It's amazing when you find what you love doing.
Yeah.
It's not, you know,
and it was cool too, because I wanted to be in film and television as an actor, but, you know, these people wanted me to be me. Yeah. Like that. That's a pretty special feeling. Like, hey, no, you know, just be yourself. We just want you to come in and, you know, be you, and make guests feel comfortable, and highlight the community, the people and the businesses, and the incredible stories and inspirational people that we have in the community. And what a great way to get to know your community, I'll tell you. It was amazing. Yeah.
What's so during that period is when you sort of, I guess, made it public that you had this medical condition. What was the decision to do that? I remember the night. I remember you posted on Facebook, and I was like I said, I didn't even know that was a thing that people had, and this is a huge thing. I thought, now what happens to people? You know, what happened? How do people treat you after that, right? And it's an amazing thing when you're transparent and you are yourself, right?
Yeah,
like that's truly becoming yourself. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what was the decision to do that? And
so I was hosting daytime at the time. At that time, I sort of had a revolving co-hosts. After Lois Lee left, my last full-time co-host, they decided they weren't going to hire another full-time host, which I understood why. And I had these revolving co-hosts, which was great. You know, Dylan Black and Julie Buin, and I had sort of a lot of the same people on. After a while, we sort of condensed it to, okay, let's condense it to these 5 people instead of, you know, the 100 that I was sort of doing before. And then in the green room, I had a chance meeting with the executive director of the Canadian Incontinence Foundation. She was she was coming on the show to talk about incontinence alongside a local company called Rip and Go, whose business is for people that suffer from not just incontinence, but, you know, especially for kids that wet the bed and that kind of thing. It was a blanket that velcroed on, so if you had an accident, you could just rip it off instead of having to take the whole bed apart, which, my God, my poor mom would love this product. Anyway, you could just rip it off and place the new one on, and you deal with it in the morning. You know, you don't have to sort of bring everything down to the laundry and that. So she was on the show, in the green room, and her name's Jacqueline. And Jackie, I said to her, and just in passing, I said, "Oh, by the way, I actually suffer from chronic fecal incontinence." She's like, "Really?" I said, yeah. She said, "Would you mind sharing that publicly on the show? I mean, it's important, for our foundation, for people to share, especially a public figure." Mm-hmm. And I didn't really skip a beat. I just said, "Yeah, sure. It's time. Yeah. I'll share it on the show today." Yeah. So we went on the show, and Jackie sort of set it up and said, "Well, Derick, you just told me in the green room you suffer from incontinence." And I said, "Yeah, I suffer from chronic fecal incontinence since birth." Sort of explained, the imperforate anus and how it came to be. And after the show, it was live, and then it was going to be airing 3 more times throughout the day. I said, "Oh, well, I've gone public in that avenue. I'm going to go public on social media as well." Mm-hmm. And it was the response was great. It was, I think, going back to the mid-20s when I finally did start telling a few people, like I would, I finally started telling a girl that I was going to go out with, what it was. Yeah. Sharing it with friends and telling them, what I had. I didn't necessarily want to stand on the rooftops during those years and scream it and tell everybody, but yeah, it was a great decision, as you said. It's sort of all of a sudden you're your authentic self, and it feels good to have that kind of transparency. And it was scary at the same time. After I put it out on social media, the response was overwhelming. So much love and support, and then people sharing their own stories or sharing stories of family members. Some of them pretty heartbreaking, that they live in isolation. Yep. People that one woman wrote me and said, outside of going for groceries and doctor's appointments, she hasn't left her house in 28 years. Oh, wow. Because she's suffering from incontinence. And that to me is really sad. And the problem with that kind of isolation, because of suffering from something that's no fault of your own, then mental health issues start to creep in. Yeah. And I know that from personal experience. So I started thinking beyond just suffering the incontinence and the embarrassment and the shame side of things. Is there's probably a lot of people suffering from depression and anxiety, panic attacks, things that I went through. And I thought, wow, I'm a public figure, and I'm out and living a really full life. So this should be something that I focus on moving ahead, is saying, hey, and then no matter what your challenge is, everybody measures their challenge differently. That's something I've learned over time. I thought if I could go public and was open and honest, and maybe that could make a difference for people. And shortly after I had come out on air, the Canadian Continence Foundation contacted me. Jackie called me, I think within a week, said, "Derick, we have been looking for a public figure that would be willing to share their story for years, and you have. And we're looking for an ambassador, sort of our champion for the Canadian Continence Foundation, and would you be that person?" I didn't even call my wife and talk it over. I just went, "Yeah, I'm in. Yeah, I'll be your ambassador."
I guarantee you've changed lives, saved lives because of that decision.
Yeah, and even if it's one person that you changed their life and made them feel more comfortable, because as I said, it's scary. Like the reality for me now is, if I'm in a room full of people and I have an accident, or I'm having cramps and bad gas, and there's a smell emanating from me. Everyone knows it's me, though, right, Mark? Like everyone, all of a sudden, like that's the one thing that still bothers me, is that I'm not flying under the radar anymore, where people can look around and go, "Is it Mark? Is it Derick? Is it Jill?"
It's a good chance it could be me too.
Right? So I'm like, put it out there, and we'll live with those consequences that aren't very great. And people are so understanding. I think we don't give people enough credit. We hear so many negative stories in the world. I mean, information comes so fast now, and unfortunately, most of that information is negative information. And I didn't want it to be a negative. I wanted it to be a positive story. And that's, sharing the challenges, I think, is important, but beyond that is how great my life is because of the decision I made. Right? That's where the positive comes in.
Yeah, for sure. And so from there, I mean, it seems like 2 years later, you're being offered a job in Montreal. And so what's that? You're the host of Montreal's Breakfast Television?
That's right. That's on City.
And that's obvious, a big deal, right?
It's the second.
What's the viewership like for that channel?
We're doing really well, actually. Hard to. I mean, ratings are something that aren't often shared with us, but management is extremely happy with how well the show is going. I mean, there's thousands of viewers for sure. That came about that as a shock to me. I never thought of moving on from Rogers TV. I absolutely loved it. I think anybody, when they get an offer like that, you have to take it seriously. And as we get older, how many of those offers are going to come your way?
Especially in an industry that seems to be changing in the other direction, where people are losing their jobs, and here you're getting this great promotion after. And I mean, maybe you can't connect the dots in that way with just telling everybody who you are and what your life has been like, and then all of a sudden things start not magically but moving in that direction, right? And this I often tell people about how for years I never talked about my brother passing away and the dreams that I had and all that stuff. And then right near the end, when I'm like, wow, things aren't going my way, I started to tell people, this is my dream, this is what I want so bad. And then magically people started helping me, and everything, the world just started moving in my direction when you're just transparent and you just tell people exactly what it is that you want, who you are, right?
I think that has a lot to do with it. I believe in karma. I believe that good things happen to good people. I've seen it over and over again. The incredible people that the good fortune of working in an industry like this is the amount of people that you get to meet. It's very unique that on average I'm probably meeting 15 to 20 new people every week, right? Who are sharing their stories. And I've always said that people say, oh, you know what? Do you ever have a really boring guest on the show? And I've always said that there's no such thing. It doesn't matter how boring a topic is. I might not be completely interested in the topic, but people are interesting. And if you can't find passion about the topic, then you use your passion for people, and it makes for a great interview. I might share a topic online and say, hey, tune in, we're going to be talking about parenting. I might turn off some people, right? But if you tune in and you see the person and you see the how well engaged they are in conversation, you might not have been interested about the topic itself, but now you're like, hey, I want to hear what this person has to say. They're very engaging.
Everybody has a great story. I'll get off stage after having told my speech in a longer version, and people are like, wow, incredible story. And I just look around going, every one of you has an incredible story. And you don't even necessarily realize it until you look back, right? We talk about connecting the dots. You can only connect the dots looking back, right? People don't realize that these things are all what have moved us in a certain direction. And till I started telling my story, I didn't realize how crazy it was. And the more I told it, the easier it got, and then the more obvious I realized that things happen for a reason. You know what I mean? And you say that we're all connected. We're all humans on this rock, and it's all connected, right? What I do has an effect on what everybody else experiences.
And the effect that you can have on people, it's magical. It really is. I did a TEDx talk in Montreal earlier this year. And, first of all, being a huge fan of TED Talks, I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing a TEDx talk. Yeah. This is an amazing experience to have. And it really was. I think they all sort of follow the same, if you sign up and you want to do a TEDx, they give you the means and the material for you to do it in your community, right? So when it was actually a guest that was on the show who encouraged me to apply. So I applied. It was TEDx Laval, and I applied. And after they accepted my application, they started sending me materials and tips and advice on how to do a great talk. That's great. Then they assigned me a coach, which happened to be the woman that suggested I should apply, which was great. Stephanie, she had done one the year before, so they have previous TEDx speakers come back as coaches, and it was a great experience from beginning to end. So I got to sort of practice my TEDx talk in front of my coach, and then I got to go and practice it in front of everybody's coaches. So I believe there were 6 of us. So they just, it was a great way for them to give you tips and tricks on how to do a great presentation. And so I did that TEDx talk. My brother and my dad came from Ottawa to Montreal to watch it, and they sat in the front row. And it was an emotional talk, sharing your story. And I look in the front row, and my dad was in tears the whole 7.5 minutes.
It's only 7.5 minute talk?
Well, these TEDx ones are a shorter version, and that was challenging, right?
Yeah, for sure it is.
I've got this story to tell, and I have to summarize it in 7 minutes, right? I went over a bit. I think I was supposed to do 7, and I went sort of 7.5. Okay. But just to see, looking in the audience and seeing people reacting, wow! I couldn't believe that I would have that kind of effect. And it wasn't just my dad. I was looking around the room, and you know what it's like. You get to see people's reaction when it was a very intimate sort of atmosphere. And then during intermission, I was one of the speakers in the first half, and we had an intermission, and I went out to greet my dad and my brother and give them a big hug, and strangers were coming up to me and hugging me and telling me, wow, what a great story, and thanks for sharing, and people are taking their pictures with me. And as you said, I said, wow, I can make a difference here. That's one of the reasons why you should be open and honest with people, because people are really understanding. They really are. And I'm not fooling myself. I'm sure there are people that snickered and laughed and have made fun of my story, and that's fine too, because that's how people get. I joke about my medical problem because it makes me feel comfortable, and sometimes you need to joke about things to make yourself feel comfortable, whether it's happening to you or to somebody else. It's not always coming from a bad place. It's coming from an uncomfortable place. When people hear stories like yours or mine or other people's stories, they're uncomfortable. So they try to find these mechanisms.
That's how you get the biggest laughs, man.
Absolutely.
Find the uncomfortable truths and make fun of them, right? That's a great thing. Well, it's been an hour and 10 minutes, man, and it's been very powerful. And I really appreciate you doing this. That was
my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great to meet you too.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah,
cool. It's about time.
Yeah, I know for sure, right? I thought too.